involvement in football, I've tried to get away from this idea that, Jewish the Jewish experience is about Israel, and I've also tried to get away from the idea that the Jewish experience is dominated by anti-Semitism, and I've tried just to write from the point of view of a religious community that hasn't traditionally been seen as being involved in football. So issues like Israel and anti-Semitism, and even the Holocaust, I mean, things like that, they're always being brought up with Jewish issues, and I've tried to write a book, or two books now, that actually are free of those kind of issues.
To change track a little bit, in terms of Leeds United, what are your thoughts regarding Ken Bates?
Well, I haven't actually been asked that question before, because I think people always assumed, like every Leeds fan is assumed to be sort of unhappy with the Ken Bates regime. I think that we were in a terrible, terrible mess before Bates came in, and that mess predates Bates. It goes back to an era which, you're probably too young to remember, I don't know, but the David O'Leary era. I mean, how old were you when O'Leary's Babes got to the semi-final of the Champions League?
8 years old.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Were you a Leeds fan then?
Never have been.
Oh, sorry, but you are from Leeds.
Yeah, but I know
right.
people who were.
Yeah. Well, it was an exciting time. So you're from Leeds, and who do you support then?
Celtic.
Right, of course.
My dad's influence.
Oh, that's fine, because my son supports Leeds, and we now live in Essex.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfectly allowed. But let me just say that one of the best teams I've ever seen play at Leeds were Celtic, when they had Jimmy Johnston and the Lisbon Lions and so on. So that's going back a long time. I'm very unhappy with the last few years of the regime, but I do think that given the debt that the Ridsdale regime had got us into, and the fact that Leeds had gone from being semi-finalists in the Champions League to the second division, when Bates came in, they then dropped into the third division, also known as League One, and went into administration. And you thought, how much lower can Leeds get? And I think that what you needed was a bit of financial stability, and I think that happened. But what I've really been disappointed by in the last few years has been every young player that's come through who's shown great promise, and I can mention Johnny Howson, Max Gradle, Jermaine Beckford, and you've got a first team of them have been sold, and very often to Norwich of all teams. The most humiliating thing of all is we're not just a feeder team; we're a feeder team to Norwich. Apologies if there are any Norwich fans listening, but if we're a feeder team to Liverpool or Arsenal or the team across the Pennines, I'm not allowed to mention for religious reasons, then that would be okay. But where have Leeds been going, where they've been selling off their best players year after year? They've been going nowhere, and I feel now we're going somewhere. The reason is 2 words: Neil Warnock. He is the man to get Leeds back in the Premier League.
You just mentioned how Leeds' past success, and
Yeah.
would you say that they're still a Premier League club that are in the Championship and deserve to be in the Premier League, or would you say that they're at their level now?
I'd say they are one of the top 6 clubs in Britain. I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that. I mean, my day job, I'm a Sunday Mirror sports writer, and I've been that for the last 14 years. And every time I meet anyone in football, and they ask me who I support, and they say Leeds, definitely one of the 6 top clubs in the country. The reason is their history. I mean, very few other teams will have a film made about them, like the Damned United. And my book was Sports Book of the Year, and I think there is a sense that Leeds United's history, like Celtic's history. I mean, your song, Celtic songs, if you know your history, it's enough to make your heart go ooh.
Yeah.
And that makes my heart go ooh too. But in Leeds, the city of Leeds, and you're all, I mean, you two are from other places, but you'll know that Leeds is a city of like 770,000 people. There's only one football club. It's the third biggest city in the country. It should be not just Premier League, but top six. And we've punched below our weight for the last 20 years, since they won the title in '92, the last team to win the old First Division, and I think Leeds punched below their weight, so they haven't found their level. They've been out of the Premier League now for 9 years. What other city? I mean, Newcastle is your team. That's also a big city with one club in, but if Newcastle go down, they seem to like come back the following year, more or less. You don't see them having 9 years out of the Premier League, do you? Newcastle. I mean, how many times have Newcastle been out of the Premier League in the last, or the top flight, in the last 30 years? Well, once or twice, but they tend to bounce back fairly quickly, don't they? Whereas Leeds have just been 9 years out of the Premier League.
In terms of the current season, do you feel promotion is a realistic aim?
Well, if we had a glass in front of us and it was like filled halfway, I would be saying that glass is half full, but most of my fellow Leeds fans would say that glass is half empty. I'm very much an optimist. I always think that we're going to do well because of two reasons. The first is Neil, the second is Warnock.
What do you think about payday loans like Wonga sponsoring football clubs?
I think that's that's a good idea. I think we've got to be realistic now with what's happening to football. But actually, I have to say that despite being a football journalist, I'm not sort of up to speed with that. I know that you should never admit that. So could you just explain a bit more what you mean by that?
Wonga are a payday loan company, and as you probably know, they've just they're going to be sponsors of Newcastle's kit, and they charge loans of up to 4,212% APR, and they've during the recession, several MPs have blamed them for making a lot of people's lives worse.
Right. Okay. Well, I think I'm not one of those people who kind of will comment on things I don't really know much about. So I'll have to say I don't know much about that. I'm not going to comment because, what's my opinion worth? I think if you're a football writer and a sports writer, and I've been to 4 World Cups and lots of Olympics and things like that. I think I've got a level of expertise. But I think it's interesting that you can sit in a pub and ask somebody that question, and they might have a better opinion about it than I do.
So there's been a lot of news about a potential Leeds takeover in recent weeks. If new owners were to come in, what would you expect of them?
I think I'd expect, first of all, that Neil Warnock be given a war chest. In other words, he hopefully will get 5, 10, 15 million pounds to spend on new players. And I think if he had that, and his record has proven that he can do it at QPR and Sheffield United and many clubs really, I think that Leeds would have a great chance of getting back into the Premier League this season or the season after. I also think that the morale of the Leeds fans would be a lot better, because whether they are right or wrong, there's a terrible negativity about Leeds in the sense of every week we get Bates out, and I think this means that if Leeds lose, Bates gets blamed, and I think it's in a way corrosive to the football club to have a situation where a substantial minority of the fans are very vocally opposed to the chairman. I mean, look what happened at Blackburn. I think you had Steve Keane kind of every week getting Keane out, and even when they won games, the fans would protest. But it didn't help, did it? It didn't help Blackburn's cause. They went down. I'm not saying it was because of that. I think the Leeds fans are a lot more loyal, actually, in the sense that although they attack Ken Bates, I think they'll always get behind the team. But a new ownership, particularly the one that has a bit of money, will be a fantastic morale boost for the fans and for the players.
In terms of the current squad, who do you feel is the key player for Leeds United?
The person who's impressed me most this season is Austin, and I mean, he's an astonishing player. I mean, he's a typical Leeds player, you know. He is somebody who gives 100%, physically very strong, very motivated, very hungry,